Buttons pushed. Good evening, ladies and menfolk, and everyone else out there. Welcome to episode 116 of Word Ninjas Live. I am your host, Charles, and joining me tonight from the darkness.
I am Will, hiding behind the darkness of bad internet connection, here to hopefully at least provide my voice.
And I am Calvin, and you can see me pretty clearly, and hopefully you can hear me just as clearly.
So far, so good.
Well, all right. That's a good start.
And our other co-host is running late. Maybe he'll be able to join us. Maybe not. We shall see. But in the meantime, hey, let's get things rolling. Our talkie point for this week is all about the hero's journey. Because we are properly in November now, and that means it's NaNoWriMo season. So let's talk about stories, specifically the most archetypal story format there is, because Joseph Campbell wrote an entire book about the hero of 1,000 faces. Because the hero archetype is so prevalent across everyone's respective cultures throughout history and storytelling, it's worth paying attention to. If you're able to check out the show notes for this episode over on fcwriters.com for episode 116, you will see that we have tossed up links for the PDF version of Joseph Campbell's book, a link to the full hero's journey, and also some character archetypes, just for your reference. We're not going to be talking about the entire book, because the entire book is about 300 book pages long or so, and we don't have time for that. But there are some specific parts of it that are worth talking about. But before we start diving into such details, let's actually get an intro from our last co-host.
I'm Justin and I'm late. Mic check, mic check.
You are very resonant and echoey.
Okay, hold please.
But you are here, which means we have full attendance. So, and full volume. So jumping right into the hero's journey, what is the hero's journey? There's a couple different perspectives on what the hero's journey is in regards to the various steps and stages and ways you can break it down, but the primary setup is a 12-step process. And it's not like the AA steps. This is more no, that would also be full circle. I'm not sure where I'm going with this analogy, so how about we just detail the actual 12 steps before I mess this up even more. The 12 steps kick things off with you are introduced to the hero or heroine, or the main character of your story. One of the main examples that everyone tends to use for the hero's journey is Star Wars. And we are going to be we would use episodes 4, 5, and 6 of the Star Wars movie verse, as it were, in these examples. Because Luke Skywalker in this example would be the main character, and we are introduced to him and his more or less ordinary world on a desert wasteland of sadness. Things then get kicked off when you are given a call to adventure, or you are given a quest, or some sort of plot point comes up in front of the main character, and they either accept it or refuse it, or try and delay because, hey, they're living an ordinary life in an ordinary world. Why would they want to change things up? If we were to keep with the Star Wars theme, the call to adventure is, hey, we have a weird droid that is doing weird things. Let's go talk to that weird old hermit and see what he knows. it then gets kicked up a notch from there, as for the most part, most heroes or heroines are a little reluctant to leave their ordinary life completely, just at the drop of a proverbial hat, and go off on an adventure, see what there is to see in the world, or try and accomplish great feats. But if you're in Star Wars and your known family kind of spontaneously combusts or not so spontaneously combusts, then you don't really have much keeping you tied down, so you're allowed to keep on rolling. And I'm curious if Justin would like to add any commentary to his sad shaking of his head, or shall I keep on delaying while he continues to set up and get ready and hopefully can join in the conversation?
I'm here. I hope no one saw what just happened off camera.
I wasn't paying attention. I just saw you shake your head.
I carried a giant plate of food and then slipped on the hardwood floor and dropped it all on the ground.
Oh.
Yep. How's my heat now?
You're sounding fine now.
Okay. I think it was using the other mic.
Although now you just sound disappointed and hungry.
I'm not really that hungry, but I am disappointed because those were all crackers and now they're shattered into pieces. So, question about the hero's journey. I assume that's what we're talking about right now?
Yes.
Does a hero's journey require a MacGuffin, by definition?
I think the traditional hero's journey does require a MacGuffin. And for those of you not familiar with the term, a MacGuffin is some sort of object or person or activity that needs to be acquired from getting R2-D2 to whoever it needs to go to, and then finding stuff out from there, to checking out whatever Justin is trying to highlight in his very blurry camera. Those are very sad crackers. Now, in Justin's hero's journey, the crackers can be his MacGuffin, but after losing his MacGuffin, what does he do?
That drives the rest of the plot forward. In order to recover, I need to re-find my MacGuffin and finish my journey. Luckily, I found more MacGuffins, which is actually a common plot device in the hero's journey. If they lose something, there's usually another one. Usually the bad guy has something, and then you're like, oh no, we have to get it from the bad guy. And then you're like, oh wait, we found another one, and we can use it against the bad guy.
Yeah, pretty much.
So basically, acquire MacGuffin, lose MacGuffin somehow, go on a journey to reacquire MacGuffins.
Right.
Or MacGuffins.
Yep. Preferably a more powerful MacGuffin than the one you already had.
And on occasion, destroy the MacGuffin.
Yes.
Sometimes
one
in the fires
through-
of Mount Doom.
Yes, the One Ring is a MacGuffin. You may argue that's not a MacGuffin because there actually is exposition and reasoning to why they're trying to destroy the ring. A MacGuffin is usually a dumb thing that has no background. The Elder Scrolls series is really, really bad at this, where they're like, you have to find the staff that's in this dungeon. It belonged to some king for some reason, and it's the only thing that has the magical spell to defeat the other dragon. You're like, what? And then they're like, go get it. And welcome to the Hero's Journey 101. It's basically dungeon crawling.
Yeah, it really is. Because, I mean, if you're living in the real world and you get tossed into that type of scenario, you're probably going to be a little hesitant or a little jaded as to the whole scenario and kind of call it out for what it is. Like, why am I being drawn into this ridiculous scenario after living such a normal life? Thankfully, in the hero's journey, you're generally met with some sort of mentor or wise old man and or woman who know more than they should about the MacGuffin and things going on.
Does the hero's journey always involve the hero reluctantly going on said journey? Or being ill-prepared for said journey?
I believe traditionally, yes. There are some authors who kind of futz with the hero's journey to make it more understandable why they don't have as many qualms about going on the hero's journey. Or if it's just parody, then that's a whole nother
Right.
line of questioning. But it is useful to have mentors because they can help you cross the first line in the sand, as it were, to get towards the MacGuffin or figure things out, go on the adventures. Like Dorothy goes on the yellow brick road. Not sure where.
Oh yeah, I guess that is a hero's journey, isn't it?
Yeah, not sure where Luke Skywalker would be in regards to passing the first threshold, as they phrase it.
His parents, spoiler alert, or his aunt and uncle getting killed.
I feel like that's more. No, I guess yeah, probably would fit under there, wouldn't it?
Because he was
That's what I was
basically not gonna go, but then they got killed. So then he's like, well, there's nothing for me here.
Yeah. And then the part that comes after that is the hero encounters tests and helpers, and allies and enemies and stuff. Like when Luke goes to find a ship so they can get off planet to start finding the MacGuffin and do stuff. Or as Dorothy picks up wayward peoples in the land of Oz. And usually you're at least introduced to one of the main enemies or the main enemy, who usually has the MacGuffin at that point, or is also hunting for the MacGuffin. And this is usually like the meat of the story, because it's not just a one-off thing. Usually there's multiple tests or trials or aspects to get towards the MacGuffin. And then eventually they phrase it as you reach the innermost cave. Or basically you fight your way up to the boss battle. You've gotten through all the peons and minions and traps and locked doors and stuff, and you finally make it to where the MacGuffin should be.
In the case of A New Hope, the MacGuffin is the Force, and the cave is a literal cave.
And then the hero endures the supreme ordeal, which sounds a lot more dramatic than it usually is for most heroes' journeys. That is basically the boss battle. That is when you come up against the main enemy or antagonist in your story. And generally, the hero is successful in some way, shape, or form in either acquiring the MacGuffin or destroying the MacGuffin, or at least getting the MacGuffin away from the main antagonist.
Usually involves locking away some deep, dark, magical items so that a sequel book can be written later about somebody finding and then releasing that secret cage. The World of Warcraft lore has a lot of that. We can't really destroy this enemy because we need to use him for the raid in the next expansion. So we're going to have him locked away, maybe in like an ethereal plane, and then he comes back because he's like super powerful again. What? Doesn't even make any sense.
Or like when in the Lord of the Rings verse, or Middle Earth verse, or whatever you want to call it, they locked away the Necromancer and or Sauron in a couple different ways. They locked away all the ring wraiths and Nazgul, but they eventually come back because the main MacGuffin has not been properly disposed of.
Right, because reasons.
Because reasons. Because proto-hobbits who then hide in mountains for years with the MacGuffin. Thankfully, once you acquire the MacGuffin, or as they phrase it, seizing the sword, or just main reward after facing off with the main enemy, you're then...
Obtain Triforce.
Yeah. Then, theoretically, you're allowed to take your rewards and winnings and whatnots and head on home, or head on towards some sort of resolution. You're allowed to move on with your life because the adventure is over. Your goals have been accomplished.
There's usually some sort of coda that either wraps up or intrigues for a future possibility of a story.
And then the 11th step is called the resurrection, where the hero emerges from the special world, adventure, blah de blah, and transformed by their experiences. They're never the same again. So basically dealing with all the PTSD from their shenanigans.
I feel like step 11 is also spread out through like the whole of Act 3.
Yeah, it's interlaced. And then it wraps things up with return with the elixir, or basically the MacGuffin, if the MacGuffin is not disposed of or destroyed beforehand. I think that could also count as you return to a somewhat normal life with all the experiences and knowledge and skills that you've gained while going on your adventures.
What if Gandalf was the MacGuffin the whole time?
In what way?
So they find him pretty quickly. I know he's supposed to be the old wise man that knows more than he should. So this is mostly in jest. So they find him, and then they lose him to a Balrog.
Eventually, yeah.
And then they're like, oh no. And then they have to do other things. I haven't read the books. I only know the movie lore. And then Gandalf comes back, and then Frodo gets to bring Gandalf home back to Hobbit Town, the Shire.
You know, if you bring the Silmarillion lore into things, and you stretch it out all the way to Lord of the Rings, that's not entirely far-fetched. He is a main component in every step along the way towards defeating Sauron, or whatever his original name was, I can never remember. But he, along with Radagast the Brown, Saruman the Asshat, and the two blue wizards that never get names ever and are never seen in the entire lore, they're brought over to stop Sauron originally. It just takes them a while.
Yeah.
Because Gandalf, the MacGuffin, is the only one that actually gets shit done.
And you would think, being an all-powerful elder god in human form, he would be a little bit better at it.
Nope. I mean, to be fair, he had to play politics because Saruman was theoretically his senior. And then Radagast was just off playing with nature, and who knows whatever happened to the two blues. The Blues brothers just wandered off, never to be seen again.
Now, are they... I don't want to get too far off track, but they're all in, like, the Wizards' Council.
Correct.
But only Gandalf is one of those other guys that I can't remember the name of. The original god spirits. People listening to this that know what I'm talking about are screaming right now.
Stephen Colbert is banging his head against a desk right now because he knows all the lore inside and out. All of those wizards were from the Undying Lands originally, before everything got split and set up on fire because someone decided to knock down the sun towers and set the entire all of creation aflame.
The Anur.
Yeah.
So so Radagast was also in Anur?
Correct.
Oh, oops.
Along with Saruman and the two blues. They were all
immortal spirits.
Yeah, effectively. They were all sent across from the Undying Lands originally to chase after Sauron, who had a name before moving over to Middle-earth, but I can't remember what it is. It starts with like an M or something weird. But Gandalf is basically needed to accomplish all of the various steps along the way for the various characters. I mean, granted, it's primarily Bilbo and then Frodo, but also the entire dwarf, like the dozen dwarves would not have been able to accomplish anything without him. They would not have found the ring without him, because he started that whole shenanigans. They wouldn't have gotten rid of the fire drake in the Misty Mountains without him. They wouldn't have been able to use the eagles at so many convenient times without him. He's like the master MacGuffin. It wouldn't surprise me if there's an article somewhere out there that details all of this in greater detail and authority than what we're rambling on about. But the main reason I wanted to bring up the whole concept of the hero's journey is because of how prevalent it is in so much literature, and not just American literature or British literature, but it goes across all European literature, Asian literature, every literature that I've come across, really. There is just a set standard for how stories are told and created and organized. This happens to be one of the main layouts, which is useful if you're participating in Nano and you want to have a hero's journey that actually follows more or less the main archetypes and structures and whatnot. And depending on Will's internet connection, hopefully he'll be able to chime in with his perspective on this.
We'll see, depending on if my internet plays nice. Question mark?
You're sounding good to me.
Cool.
Just don't turn on your video. Too much bandwidth.
Nope. I am the fox in the shadows today. Let's see. I'm just going to look at what I wrote in the show notes, mostly to keep things kind of swift. I really personally don't know why the hero's journey is so prevalent exactly. I was thinking maybe because it's easy for a wide variety of audiences to connect to this story. Just the story of just what seems to be a regular person becoming a great hero and overcoming all obstacles in front of them. Just, I suppose, it can appeal to the fantasy in all of us where we all want to be the great hero of a story. And this idea kind of works in all time periods for almost anybody, which is why people just keep writing it again and again. And that maybe also because it's easy to write.
It's probably also easy to remember a concrete path to most stories, because remember, stories used to be told.
Yeah.
Not written. So having a template that everyone was familiar with probably made the transfer of stories and the recreation of stories and the telling of the same story but with just different spins on it a lot easier, but also a lot more derivative.
Yeah, that's probably also true. When I was thinking of stories that followed the hero's journey, I, of course, because I always bring it up, thought of the Legacy of Drizzt, which throughout the various trilogies probably have the hero's journey again and again and again for each new villain or MacGuffin.
Yeah, a dozen times over at this point.
And you could probably make the case that if you read the entire thing from beginning to end, it's one massive hero's story made up of many shorter heroes' stories.
Mm-hmm.
So I suppose that makes it a little bit interesting. But mostly the other stuff, I kept thinking back to Roman myths and Greek myths. The Iliad and the Odyssey, the tales of Hercules, of Achilles. When I thought of heroes' journeys, I just kept thinking of those types of stories instead of more modern ones. I don't know why.
Well, a lot of mythology has the hero's journey, so I would also toss in like Norse mythology. I know has a lot of examples. I'm not familiar with other mythologies, so I can't really speak specifically, but I'm sure they're there.
Hercules was the son of Zeus and a mortal, but growing up he didn't know it. So he starts out as a regular person and then is told, oh, you're the son of God and you have to go on this journey. And at first he didn't want to, but then something happened and he had to. And then he has to go on many trials, fighting hydras and whatnot, dealing with Hades and all that.
Hmm. Although, to be fair, Hercules wasn't exactly alone in regards to being a child of Zeus.
Yeah, Zeus had a lot of... I think Achilles was also... No, Achilles was dipped in the mystical water.
Hmm.
But again, that's your whole... he was dipped in the protective waters to make him immortal as a kid. And he was supposed to be normal, but because of that, he was needed to go on a grand adventure.
And no one thought to give him a bit of shielding around a particular body part.
Well, that was the part they were holding when they dipped him in the water.
Yeah, but you'd think you might mention that to him, maybe give him a bit of armor there or
A
something.
little, an armored slipper.
Yeah.
And the Odyssey, the Tales of Odysseus, definitely a hero's journey. A long one.
I almost feel like the MacGuffin in that one is Odysseus's own
So
arrogance.
those are the ones I can...
Oh,
I'm trying to remember if he was the one that had to go up against the Gorgon.
who, Odysseus?
Yeah.
I don't remember.
I don't remember. It's been a long time since I read the Odyssey. I know parts of the Trojan War were in that one. The whole thing going up against the Cyclops when he told the Cyclops his name was Nobody. So that when the Cyclops got defeated and ran back to his friends and they asked, who did this to you? He just kept saying, nobody did this to me. And ha ha ha, funny joke.
Mm.
So, yeah, a lot of the hero's journey has been around for a very, very long time. Long before Joseph Campbell, I'm assuming.
Oh, yes. He was just nice enough to kind of organize it for people.
He saw a thing and then kind of said, hey, this is a thing.
Yep. Is there
Very
anything?
cool.
Is there anything else that people would like to toss in regards to the hero's journey before we move along?
Are there any stories that anybody knows that kind of is within the realm of the hero's journey, but like takes a diversion from like the standard 12 steps?
Not off the top of my head, but I'm sure there are some.
The reason I ask is because I came across an anime very recently that is very like either diverges from the hero's journey or like breezes through it very quickly as part of the plot, part of the initial plot. There's an anime called One Punch Man that I came across. I'm guessing you're familiar with that one.
Oh, yes.
I watched the first 5 episodes of it a couple of days ago.
If you spend time on Punch Man,
What's that?
if you spend any time on Tumblr recently, you're familiar with One Punch Man.
Correct.
Oops. I have not spent a lot of time on Tumblr lately, but a high school friend of mine kind of raved about it on Facebook and got me into it. So I got a chance to watch the first 5 episodes because Hulu is carrying it right now. basically, let's see, the main character, Saitama goes through, let's see, 1, 2, let's see, skips 3, 4 doesn't exist. He's basically breezed through the first 5 and is currently at number 6 right now. Just from the first episode. Because he came across, I guess this enemy would be considered the MacGuffin, this giant crab dude that basically ate too much crab and his DNA reformulated and turned him into a giant crab man. And he
Asians and their giant enemy crabs.
So, Saitama basically is a 22-year-old man who's unemployed and is basically down on his luck. But he finds himself facing this crab guy and finds himself having to defeat him in order to save this child who messed with the crab dude early and was getting ready to kill him. And after Saitama takes down the crab man, it basically awakens a desire that he had when he was young to become a hero. So he spends the next 2 years training to become a hero and turns into what we know as One Punch Man. So there's an interesting plot point which takes the hero's journey and basically turns it on its head.
Well, I know there has been a growing amount of stories that focus on the villain's perspective of stories. So you're not following the hero's journey so much as the villain's journey. I'm sure there's plenty of parallels, but it's different enough to mention. And now I'm kind of curious how the hero's journey steps line up when you go up against manga and anime that go on until the end of time and beyond. How would you line that up against One Piece or Dragon Ball or Bleach?
Well, I think they just keep getting more and more. It's not one long hero's journey, it's a set of hero's journeys.
It's a cyclical
another Dragon Ball's
scenario.
missing. We have to go get it. Frieza's back, but he has a new final form that's even more final than the last final form. And now Goku has a new level of Super Saiyan to combat that. Now he's God Saiyan.
Super God Saiyan mode.
Yep. Excuse me.
Which apparently even the writers got fed up with, and now it's just Saiyan Blue or some such.
Right.
For our viewers and listeners out there, by all means post in the comments some examples of your favorite heroes' journeys, or some examples that kind of track or go off the beaten path of the hero's journey, things that shake it up a bit, or skip steps, or add steps, or otherwise make it a little different, make it a little unique. Post in the comments, let us know so we can check them out. And in the meantime, let's roll on to the highlights reel, where we have a few things to highlight this week.
Oh, I wasn't on mute this whole time. I apologize. Hopefully I didn't make any weird noise.
Nothing out of the ordinary.
I think I coughed a lot. Sorry.
First piece up is something we collectively noticed today. While it is NaNoWriMo season, someone has decided to create NaGraFrimo. I'm not quite sure how you would pronounce that, but National Paragraph Writing Month. And the nice takeaway of this, or like the neutral way of taking this, is not everyone has the time to write 50,000 words in 30 days, which at the moment I'm definitely feeling. So working on a paragraph length, or I'm just going to pare it down to the concept of a smaller goal than 50,000 words in 30 days, is perfectly acceptable for some to work on. They've set the goal of a paragraph per month, or in a month, and a very well-written paragraph, not just something slapped together in 20 seconds or something, but something they can be proud of. The way they go about phrasing and discussing this is not that neutral.
They have opinions on NaNoWriMo as a whole.
And to be fair, so do we. They differ a bit.
Hmm?
They differ a bit compared to...
Oh, yeah, they have negative opinions. And they make them very well known. Essentially, and I'm not going to strum up any drama here, you can look at the show notes and read the article for yourself. But basically, their opinion is that they don't understand. I think the problem is that they don't understand what National Novel Writing Month tries to represent as itself, and they think that it's just a bunch of hack writers just writing a bunch of garbage for 50,000 words and then calling it a day. And there are people who do that. Lord knows I've done that a few times over the years during NaNoWriMo. But the larger point is to get people into the habit of writing. The biggest thing is that people that want to be a writer but don't put in the time to be a writer are not going to be a writer. And when they always ask, they spend a lot of time on forums and on Reddit, trying to ask for advice on, how do I be a good writer? Well, the answer that no one likes to hear is to write. Just like, how do you learn how to play the guitar? You play the guitar, and you play it forever. Not forever, literally, but you just play it a lot, and that's how you get better. There's no tips or tricks. You can learn technique, and that's fine, but to ask the question, how do I become a writer, is not a real question. And the people that get stuck on that and want some magical elixir that makes them a good writer are going to look at National Novel Writing Month and scoff at it. And there are some people who are so precious about what they write, and I'm not trying to use precious derogatory, but they're very precious about what they write, and they don't want to write anything that they consider garbage. Everything that they write has to be perfect all the time. And the point of National Novel Writing Month is to try to let go of that urge, try to open up your creativity, and then along the way you'll find some new ideas that you can then put into your writing. No one goes out of NaNoWriMo, prints it up, and sends it to the publisher. That's just not a thing that happens. People have written stuff in NaNoWriMo that have then later become books and screenplays, but those are after a lot of editing. And I'm sure the first draft looks nothing like the current draft. And so what this person is saying is that he'd much rather see, a really well-written paragraph. And this particular author, it sounds like he's making a lot of excuses about why he doesn't write more. And instead of owning up to it, he tries to put it on society and tries to put it on, oh, I don't have time to write 50,000 words in a month because some of us don't have enough time. We can't even read a book. How could we possibly write? And I think that's the wrong way of looking at this whole thing. National Paragraph Writing Month is an interesting concept, and it's something that I may try, just for the hell of it.
I would personally be intrigued by the concept of a national flash fiction writing month, or just flash fiction writing challenge with a set deadline.
Sure, but I think the Camp Nano kind of helps cover that aspect.
Yeah, potentially.
But the idea of, so there's this other thing that I do, or used to do a lot, and should probably get back into, is the 100 words a day.
Yep.
We have to write a very concise piece with exactly 100 words. And it makes it interesting because each word that you have has a lot of stock, because you only get to have 100 of them. So you have to be very precise in what you're writing about. And I find that a fun exercise. Do I think it has more value than National Novel Writing Month? No. Do I think National Novel Writing Month has more value than 100 words a day? Also no. You can come up with new ideas and play with them and present them to the world without crapping all over somebody else's endeavor. And I think that's really why this particular article left a bad taste in my mouth. Not because of the idea, but because on the way of presenting this idea, they crap all over the other idea, which is not really necessary. So I presented this article today for the group, and we had a little discussion on it. And we weren't necessarily incensed, but we were confused about, what happened to this person?
I'm more frustrated in that I've seen this mentality before in years gone by, because there is a subset of nano participants who, for the most part, generally reach the 50,000 words or beyond in the month of November, which is fantastic. And then they just send it in the hopes of getting it printed and published without editing.
That can't possibly be true.
It is.
No.
Yeah, there are some who actually send unedited manuscripts out after November, and it is a regular or annual disgruntlement amongst certain publishers, because
I would close my doors from November 31st to January 25th. And be like, no new submission.
Yeah. See, the thing that some people miss and then other people get cranky about is National Novel Writing Month's main concept is everyone has a story in them. And having the set deadline and the international community to help cheer you on helps you get that story onto paper. That does not finish the overall adventure you're on, though. That does not finish your hero's journey in regards to writing a novel. You have to actually edit that novel afterwards, and that isn't always effectively communicated on the Nano site or in the community or elsewhere.
Also, it can be hard.
Can be. It's
I'm trying to be nice.
Editing is not easy, even if that's your day job. And that's also...
Go ahead.
I was going to say that's also one aspect of whenever people ask, how do I become a good writer? That question isn't inherently wrong, but most people who ask that are coming in from the perspective that there is some MacGuffin that can help them become a good writer. There's got to be one set method or style or thing I can do, and then I can be a good writer.
Right. It's the diet and exercise, it's the practice, it's the write every day, it's the very simple answer that no one wants to deal with. Because that's all they've been hearing their whole life, and there's got to be another way. And there isn't.
How do I become good at what I want to be good at? That spans any interest, regardless of art or otherwise.
It's very similar to the idea of, I have this great idea, and because I have this great idea, I should make this idea a reality, and I should get all the credit for it. When people don't realize that ideas are a dime a dozen, there's a reason that phrase exists. Ideas aren't worth anything. It's the work that you put into that idea that's valuable. It's the programmer, it's the artist, it's the web designer. It's not the guy who draws the 4 boxes and says, this is how I want my content to look. It's the guy that actually codes that, the guy that decides the color scheming. You know, there's a lot of work that goes into everything, and to say that I come up with an idea and then that's all I need to do is not giving other people enough credit, and it's not giving you enough credit. You can do a lot more than come up with ideas. You just have to actually apply yourself. And that's what I've been struggling to do my whole, the last decade, as I've been getting into my 30s, is turning those ideas into realities by actually going out and learning what I need to learn to be able to do these things.
Yeah. One of the biggest lessons that I've learned while becoming a better writer is you can read all the books on writing you want, you can take all the classes on writing you want, but if you don't actually sit down and write more and edit what you've written and look at it critically and figure out what works, what doesn't, how do you want your voice to come across, all that stuff, you're just going to be a writer, not necessarily a good one.
Right. And the other thing to do is to read a lot and be critical about what you're reading. And a lot of people don't want to take that step either because, now I have to add reading to my list of things that I do that I don't have enough time for in my day.
Yeah, and I can understand why that is a hard thing to accept, not just for writing, but in anything. Like, gee, if I want to become a good musician, you mean I actually have to listen to other musicians and kind of listen to it critically? What is their style? How do they go about it? Or artists, how do they figure out their pieces? What's their process? Well, I don't like those bits. How do I make it my own? How do I put my own spin on it? Critical thinking really does become pretty important in basically everything.
One of the things I really like about the No Plot, No Problem book that Chris Beatty, I believe, put together,
Yes,
is the list that you put together for yourself. The list of things that you really like in the books that you're reading and things that you don't like in the books that you're reading. So you can kind of gauge what you feel are positives and negatives in the writing space and how you can play with those ideas and make something that you would want to read. I think that's extremely valuable exercise.
yeah, and that's a very easy way to start thinking critically and kind of taking a step back and seeing the forest amongst the trees, which is necessary sometimes.
Well, we could go on for days about how to be a good writer. Maybe that'll be a topic for another day. But
Yeah, that's
we've got a lot to go
in
through
itself.
still. So I'm gonna try to push things along.
Moving on, you know that company that is kind of responsible for killing bookstores? They're opening a bookstore.
Yep.
Amazon has been reported to be opening an actual brick-and-mortar store to promote and sell physical copies of books.
So this must have been their whole plan from the very beginning.
Yeah, just
Create a
get rid
monopoly.
of all competition
Exactly.
and then take over.
So there's a couple interesting things here. I read and thought about this a lot. So they're a little bit different than a regular brick and mortar store because they're actually using all of the metadata that they've collected over the years to kind of figure out what to stock. They're going to have the actual Amazon ratings on each book and a couple different user reviews on each book. It's more of a giant advertisement for Amazon more than an actual bookstore. You know, Amazon, literally, I have some stock in Amazon, and it's doubled in the last year. So they've got some money. And opening up a store is the equivalent to them as of opening up a giant billboard.
Yeah, I can almost guarantee that Amazon Books, as they're calling the store, is going to be a loss leader, or whatever that term happens to
Yes,
be.
loss leader.
They can eat that loss because it is just a giant promotional space that then they get extra data from all the people who come in and potentially purchase things. It's just interesting to think that one of the main reasons that brick and mortar stores have been slowly phased out is now bringing out a physical bookstore, even though it's using it in a different way.
So this kind of sparked a discussion on Reddit about the value of having a brick and mortar store and the tactile nature of going through books and kind of browsing, kind of going through on an adventure and finding gems within a mass. You know, when we switched to online and we got all this metadata and reviews and 5-star rating systems, we stopped going out of our way and exploring new books. You know, why would I read this 4-star book when I could read this other 5-star book instead? And so we spend a lot of time. This isn't just books. This is online shopping in general.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm very guilty of this. Like, if I'm going to buy a $2,000 snowblower, I want the best $2,000 snowblower. And I'm going to spend a week researching it before I buy it.
Yep.
Instead of actually going out and looking at a couple and trying them out and just seeing what the horsepower specs are on the sign and deciding on my own what the build construction looks like and how the seals are set, I'm basically basing my opinion on a bunch of reviews that may or may not even be legitimate. And that's okay generally when you're buying a snowblower, but when you're trying to explore the creative arts, you're really missing out on a lot.
I was about to add in, you're kind of at an advantage in regards to physical goods. Being an engineer, you can actually visualize things in that mindset. Not everyone would.
That's true. I'll admit to that. But on the point of creative arts is, you know, it's the whole Game of Thrones phenomenon is, oh, Game of Thrones came out and a lot of people read it and a lot of people liked it, and it got a huge train going, and now, you know, there's this critically acclaimed show, and now everyone else is reading the book. But what about the other book that didn't get picked up by a major, network? What about the really great book that only like 5 people have read so far because it's, you know, independently published locally in Maine and hasn't actually gotten legs? And I think that's what the value of going to a bookstore and what CJ and I occasionally do and buy blind bags of books is to kind of spread our wings a little bit and not walk into our own echo chamber. And God knows I've been guilty of that with my Stephen King stint.
I'm semi-guilty of that too.
I'm trying to break out of it. And one of the ways to do that is to just go out and explore a wide breadth of content. And not all of it is going to be good. In fact, most of it's probably going to be crap. But you're not going to know that until you go out there. And you might find there's this weird subgenre that you really like. And so the idea of like going to a used bookstore and just kind of wandering about, picking some stuff up, reading the back, seeing if the plot sounds interesting, is actually really fun.
Yep. And I know on my end, I'm definitely guilty of, if I see any book from Bayan or Rock, I'll buy it without question on the presumption that I don't already own a copy of it. But beyond that, I have a lot of fun going on adventures to used bookstores and just seeing what they have, because there's stuff there that's out of print, stuff that I would never be able to conveniently find online or in a Barnes & Nobles or Books A Million at this point, because they just don't sell enough. They're not popular enough. They're not highly rated. But they're still perfectly valid books and very good stories. Of course, this may be why I have entire shelves full of unusual books that I still need to read. Not to mention a whole slew of books that I still have from Book Expo America.
It's taken me literally all year to read a book that is basically 200 pages. It's like a trade paperback, essentially.
So obviously you don't have time to read an entire book in a month, so you must be all about National Paragraph Writing Month.
Yeah, it's literally impossible to find time to do something that you love.
Yeah, the mindset I've always had in regards to reading or writing and stuff like that has actually been from one of the original Star Trek movies. I'm blanking on which number it was now, but one of the main concepts that Kirk came up with was if it's important enough, you make the time for it. And I'm sure he pulled that quote from someone else, most likely in literature or politics.
Yeah, that phrase has been around for a while, I think.
Yeah. But the concept is still valid. Like, if you want to write, you're going to have to make time for it. You're going to have to change your work-life balance and your scheduling to fit time. Same with if you want to read or anything else that is of interest or that you want to fit into your daily life. But before we go down that...
Wait, stop. Don't go to the next tab yet.
Pause.
Calvin, can we make sure when we put our website together to not use that font that they have for the title font? That is a very not good font that's very hard to read. And I hate it.
No condensed fonts of any sort for titles.
Right.
Period.
In fact, you could argue, I don't know if you're on the same page as me, but for titles, no serifs, and for actual text, serifs. That's sort of my go-to.
75% on that. No serifs for titles. Period. I'm open to a good readable sans serif for text.
Oh, I can agree with that. There's some sans serif for texting that's fine. Never for a title though. Dear God, no.
Serifs, no, do not want.
Okay, like they have extra serifs. Like look at the R or the K.
Before we create an entire talkie point about that, I'm going to move us on.
No.
Let's save that for an Inspire the Muse podcast.
Yes, where we talk about typefaces.
Yes.
Instead, let's talk about Star Wars again. Because an interesting theory has popped up on Reddit that has a lot of people thinking in regards to the prequels, which aren't necessarily as well appreciated as the originals. People have differing opinions as to the quality of the storyline in movies 1, 2, and 3 versus 4, 5, and 6. But this theory is pretty fascinating. It focuses on the character Jar Jar Binks, which a lot of people don't like. For various reasons, but generally because they feel he just doesn't seem plausible. He doesn't fit in. It's too much comedic relief when the overall story arc and politics involved are pretty dark. And then you have this weird character flopping about, causing shenanigans, and yet always being in the right place at the right time. But they tossed up the theory that Jar Jar Binks is in fact a Jedi. And not just a Jedi, but one of the high-level Sith, possibly the highest level. And he's just playing the rube to throw people off. And they give detailed examples as to why this is a semi-feasible theory. Both in regards to like his fighting ability, the Jedi mind control aspects, how he would know Emperor Palpatine, and how he guided certain events throughout the prequel trilogy. And the only reason it falls apart is because there was never a reveal that he was an evil character or anything along those lines. they feel that that was potentially pulled from the storyline simply because so many people hated that character, and they just couldn't go through with trying to explain it off that way. And I haven't seen the prequels since they came out, so I'm a little rusty as to how those storylines went and just how that character lined up along all those important points. But I actually wouldn't mind rewatching them now out of curiosity to see if that theory would make it more interesting to watch or more justifiable to have that character in as much as he was. I don't know if other people on the crew are more familiar with the Star Wars storylines and have any perspective or commentary on this. But now would be a good time to jump in.
I actually find the general theory of Jar Jar being a Force user actually reasonable. And I've been skimming through this a little bit, and I can see it. And there's some valid points made. And you can be a Force user without even realizing it. Some people say that in the original trilogy, Leia is obviously a Force user, and she can blast the crap out of stormtroopers from far away, and constantly run across hallways and get missed. So there's things to be said about that. Jar Jar being a Sith, though, that there's some logistical problems with that. Number one, there can only be 2 Sith at a time, the Master and the Apprentice. That's well-established lore. And to have a third person in the mix doesn't make any sense.
But who established that lore? What if it was Jar Jar himself to throw things off?
No.
Just to already throw you off, the entire premise behind the video game Star Wars: The Force Unleashed is that there's a third Sith.
But the expanded universe is all gone. They unretconned it all. You can't use any of it.
It's implied that Force Unleashed isn't necessarily expanded. I don't know if it's expanded universe or not.
If it's not a direct Disney property, then they're not using it.
Well, neither was the original trilogy then, because
no, they bought
that wasn't made by Disney. It was bought by Disney.
Sure. And then either way, I mean, even throughout the whole original, or not original, oh, don't send me angry letters. The new trilogy, Jar Jar never really did anything bad. He was always helping the other guys. I don't even see where they got the idea that he was a Sith. I'm looking through and I haven't gotten to that section yet.
I know in the article I read that linked back to the Reddit page for the origin of Source was like Jar Jar was in several major plot points that overthrew whatever the government in the prequels was to set up whatever the Empire was. I think it was something like that. Like
Jar Jar Binks is the one who first put in the notion that Palpatine should take full control temporarily.
Oh, but that could easily be some I know the future type of thing, setting wheels in motion. Good characters do awful shit constantly in that regard.
The reason Jar Jar did it was because Palpatine kind of put the idea in his head.
But theoretically, if
in a way,
Jar Jar Binks is the one pulling all the strings, he would already have known. It's a very weird concept that they're trying to put forth, and because it wasn't shown in the movies themselves, it's kind of a hard sell. Just interesting.
The article kind of theorized that George Lucas kind of chickened out at the end when he saw how disliked Jar Jar Binks was by general audiences. So parts of it got retconned while in production to kind of downplay that. That's the theory in that article anyway. So that's why It even says that the reason we have Count Dooku as a Sith Lord was to kind of make up for that or something.
Mm.
It is all fan theory, too.
I mean, there's no legitimate proof, which it is what it is.
It would have been interesting if they had gone through with that, but based on the actions in like the very first movie, The Phantom Menace, it might have been a hard sell.
Hmm. All right. I'm going to move us on, but I'm just going to say at the moment, unfortunately, comments are disabled for this live stream, and I'm not sure why. That's why I took myself off of screen share, so I could try and figure that out.
That seemed to have been the default when I live streamed. I wonder if now you have to turn that on manually every time.
If that's a new default setting, I do not care for it because I can't figure out where that setting is. So,
But you have the live comments. Does that work in the Google Hangouts live streaming?
At the moment, comments for this are disabled. And
No, but what about the chat? The live chat?
Like our chat?
No, like, here, continue. I'm going to try to go to our YouTube and see if I can figure it out.
There's current... Chat is also disabled for this live stream.
Oh, okay, never mind then.
Yeah, so that's something we're going to have to look into off air and figure out for future episodes.
They probably changed a bunch of stuff when the YouTube Red stuff got announced.
Well, that's asinine, and I do not care for it.
I'm sure you turn it on once and it fixes itself.
We shall see. In the meantime, let's keep on rolling in the highlights and talk about The Simpsons, because Simpsons is still rolling somehow, after I don't even know how many seasons. But The Verge managed to put together a very interesting article about just how an episode of The Simpsons is actually made, from the concept creation all the way to publication, as it were. I'm not going to go into too much detail into this article because it details every single step of the way from the pitch of the concept and everything in between, but it really was fascinating to see just how much is involved in creating just a single episode. And it's fun to see some of the behind-the-scenes stuff in regards to shows every once in a while. Like there's the table read, there's voice recording, and then direction. And I'm sure ADR might be a factor potentially. Storyboarding the whole thing. Putting together the story reel from that. There's always revision processes. It's not just a one-shot deal. And then figuring out all the bits and pieces and details and logistics and planning and processing. And apparently they actually have checkers, not the game, but people who actually check the visuals and all that to figure out if everything is the way it's supposed to be, which is useful, and I wish more shows had that, because sometimes there are some pretty weird quirks. And ACOM is relatively specific to The Simpsons and probably a few others, but they are the animation studio that animates the frames between the drawings of the final reel. Apparently they've been doing that for 25 years now for Simpsons, which is pretty impressive. And then they get all the way to the final product. Overall, it's a pretty entertaining read. I'm not sure if anyone on the crew has had time to read the whole thing or not. From the silence, I'm going to guess with no. Or they do not have commentary to add. Nope. Okay. Moving on. Books. There's more. Specifically over on Story Bundle. Now there's 4 book bundles running at the same time. Now it's just getting silly.
Wait, did you go over the NaNoWriMo writing tools last week?
The what now?
NaNoWriMo writing tools is one of those 4 bundles.
Yes, we covered it last week.
Yes.
Okay.
Sorry.
Yeah,
I thought you meant a different link.
No.
Yep. No, we covered the writing tools and monsters one week, and then I think Dark Justice was last week, and historical fiction is the latest one that has gone up. And I don't know offhand if this has been a thing of the past or if this is relatively new, but I just, for this book bundle, noticed that the minimum price to get part of the bundle, this one is specifically $3, not $1. So if there's any previous bundles where it was not $1 and up, it was actually a different price, I do apologize. But for this bundle, the starting price is $3 to get the first tier of books, which is these first 5 books. And then if you do $12 or more, you unlock the bonus tier. If you were to do the first tier of $3 and up, you would get House of Rejoicing by Libby Hawker, Uneasy Spirits by M. Louisa Locke, Sea Witch by Helen Hollick, Miss London and Aubranale by Charlotte E. English, and Sword of the Ronin by Travis Hierman. Now, it's a bit unfortunate that the Sword of Ronin is part 2 of the Ronin trilogy, and part 1 is not available in this book bundle, so keep that in mind. And the House of Rejoicing is part 1, but if you pay $12 or more, you would unlock book 2 in that series, which is Storm in the Sky, also by Libby Hawker. You'd also get Mercenary by David Gaughran, Pirate Code by Helen Hollick, which is another book 2 in a series. And the first book is actually right above it in Tier 1. Just notice that. There's Footsteps in Time by Sarah Woodbury, which is book 1 of a series. And if you are subscribed to their newsletter or you get this bundle, you would also get Maids of Misfortune, a Victorian San Francisco mystery by M. Louisa Locke. So you get a couple multi-part book series in this bundle, should you so choose, or if you are interested in historical fiction series. This one just kicked off, so you have, as of this recording, 22 days and change to go check it out. And those are the highlights for this week. All the links to such things are in the show notes for episode 116 over on fcwriters.com if you want to check it out, either currently or in the future. Moving on, we have the Productivity and Inspiration Station, where we get to talk all about stuff that we've done over the past week that have been productive or inspirational or stuff that we just want to highlight.
Yeah, I certainly did nothing this week of any note.
Nah, complete bust of a week.
Yeah, didn't do anything fun or interesting.
Yeah. The most I was able to accomplish was get another byline at work, which is always fun and appreciated, and it's nice when I'm able to find the time to do that, or make the time to do that, really. And because it's an article or blog post length piece, it kind of reminds me of how to tell a story in a flash fiction word count length, because you're very limited in word count, so you have to make every word count. And I've also been powering through 2 podcasts while working, just listening to them. The Voice Acting Mastery podcast and Mike Len's Voice podcast, where I think I've powered through probably 30 or 40 episodes between the 2 and gotten all sorts of interesting insights and tips in regards to voice acting and recording and thinking about the whole process. Although it's probably taboo to listen to such podcasts at 2 times speed, but I did that anyway. So there. And that's really all I've got for myself from this week. In regards to Nano, I met the word goal for day 1 and then immediately got behind since then, because everything else immediately got in the way again. But that's what Fridays are for. Fridays I have off. So hopefully I'll be able to make a decent amount of word count on those days to help balance things out. But as it is not Friday, hey, let's move on and see what Will has been up to in the past week.
All right. Well, I started writing the next and final chapter of My Roommate's a Stripper. I still can't believe that I've gotten to this point in the story, so it's kind of exciting. I managed to write 4 paragraphs in a day. So I guess that puts me ahead on things.
Right, but how could you possibly write 4 good paragraphs in one day?
It wasn't easy. It was very time consuming.
I imagine.
I almost didn't. There's actually a point where I did write one big paragraph. My first attempt at starting this chapter, I wrote a paragraph, decided I hated it, and just wrote a big no across the entire paragraph. Then started over again the next day.
You should frame that as a piece of inspiration.
I might take a picture of it or something. I also got caught up with some Word Ninja Live's audio editing for the audio podcast. I still need to do last week's episode, but the previous weeks are all caught up and done. And I got to edit the wonderful interview we did with Alistair Books Review, which is a book reviewer that's also a talking book.
And a very pleasant book at that.
Mm.
Oh, it's not like the insult comic dog? What's his name? Triumph.
No.
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 Alistair is very pleasant to talk to.
Okay, good.
We interviewed the crew of Alistair Books Review, and that should be going up as a kind of bonus Not Suitable for Word Ninjas podcast sometime this month. I think.
That is
Maybe?
the goal.
Okay. It'll come up at some point. And that's pretty much it out of the ordinary. And, also yesterday's game break, I did that too.
Yay.
And that's mostly been about it for me.
And we all know that Justin hasn't accomplished anything since last podcast.
I was just me.
Let's just ask him out of kindness. Hey, Justin, what have you been up to since last week?
So, last week, during the regular week, I had these 2 major reports at work to complete. And I knew I had to complete them by Friday. Not because they were due on Friday. They're actually due several Fridays ago. But because I had more important things to do over the weekend than to do work. And one of them was a 25-hour live stream that I did writing the first part of my National Novel Writing Month book. And I would like to thank everyone that participated. I raised $215 for NaNoWriMo, and that doesn't include the money that I put in earlier before I decided to do this whole thing. I'm going to write a retrospective on how it went and what I'm going to do differently, so expect that on the website. But I ended up streaming a full 21.5 hours, minus a 3-hour nap that I had to take. I was going to take it before the podcast or before the live stream, but it was Halloween and there was a huge party going outside, and so I could not sleep for those 4 hours I was planning on sleeping. So I had to move them into the middle of the live stream. But it was between 2 a.m. and 5 a.m. and no one was watching anyways.
Yeah, I only caught your live stream during the write-in. posted?
So going through the live stream was very interesting because as soon as I posted the schedule for the live stream, I used a keyword that apparently YouTube automatically flags as inappropriate, and then bans. Not only does it just remove the video and ban the video, it bans your entire account.
That's fun.
So I had to go through an appeals process on that. And then as soon as a real human looked at it, they're like, "Oh, that ban was totally bullshit. So here, we'll reenact your account." But they still suspended my live streaming capability, which is why I desperately tried to set something up with the writing group thing. And then I had to appeal that separately, and that took another 4 days. It was a big mess, but everything worked out at the end. I learned a little bit about the YouTube live streaming. You can live stream for more than 8 hours. You can live stream the entire time. But don't expect the videos to output correctly and store correctly. It only saved like the first 11 hours in a video, and then I lost the other half entirely. So that was frustrating. Probably should have broken up the live stream, and I will do that next year. So anyone that wants to go and watch it now can't, unfortunately. I deleted the 11 hours that did go through because I thought it was dumb to have the first 11 but not the other half. But I am going to put all of the story in its glory also on the website. I'm going to work on that this weekend, among other things. But raised $250, did a 21.5 live stream, and wrote 15,000 words.
That's pretty darn impressive.
My goal was 25, $250, and 20,000 words. But considering all the hurdles I had to go through, 15,000 is a pretty damn good goal. And that, I'm very proud of myself. I don't know how people write 40,000 or 50,000 words in a single day. They obviously sleep the entire day before because that's the only way I can see that happening. I think I could do it if I really prepared and practiced my word count a little bit. I found pantsing a lot of fun. I haven't had this much fun writing a bunch of garbage in a long time. Most of the stuff that I used to write, even for Nano, I found a little precious and didn't want to go too far off the mark. But this was super fun, and I'm definitely going to do this again. Unfortunately, Nano next year is like on a Tuesday.
Well, that's not good.
It's like in the middle of the week, so it's kind of dumb.
Oh, yeah, because of the leap year. That throws things out of whack.
Mm-hmm. So I'm planning on maybe doing the first full weekend of every Nano to do a 2-part 24-hour live stream where I do 2 12-hour chunks and do 4 live streams each. So it will be in 6-hour chunks, and then I take like a lunch break and then do another 6-hour chunk, and then do 2 more the next day, because that should save the video. I should be able to sleep appropriately and still get about 20,000 or more words on that one weekend.
That would be more logistically feasible.
Right. And now that I have more plans on what I would do next time, I can give people more advance notice and set things up a little bit better.
And theoretically, by then, you could show me how you set up your live stream and visuals so that potentially others could do that as well.
Oh, I should bring that up on Thursday a little bit and kind of go through it.
Because I'm kind of curious how you pulled that off.
Yep, it was really cool because you could actually see what I was writing and see my word count goal as it was being completed.
And a face cam.
Yep. A very weary face cam. I planned so many activities to do during the live stream, but it was just so fucking tired. I couldn't bear to put in any energy during the second half. But yeah, that's what I did this weekend. Hopefully that provides some inspiration for us, for other nanoers. It can be done. Just destroy your body and your mind.
Speaking of destroying other people's minds, what has Calvin been up to since last week?
Well, the only thing of note that I did last week was attend this year's WordCamp NYC. for those who are not aware, WordCamp NYC looks to be an annual weekend workshop full of lectures and all sorts of various fun goings on relating to WordPress. And I spent Saturday and Sunday going to the different lectures, networking with people. Excuse me. And basically learning a crap ton of things about WordPress that I never knew and am going to relay to, at the very least, Justin, because there's a lot of things he is going to find interesting, especially in the lectures that I attended.
I'm looking forward to secondhand absorption of your knowledge.
You'll be able to absorb it in audio form because I brought my field recorder and recorded all of the lectures I went to.
Nice.
So that was my weekend. I'm also pretty sure I drank more coffee that weekend than I have all year because I was unbelievably tired this weekend. But usually my weekends are devoted to sleep and more sleep. But this was WordCamp weekend, and I really wanted to go.
So basically, you went into nano mode and did caffeine abuse.
Very much so. Like, it wouldn't surprise me if I had like a gallon of solid gallon and a half of like coffee and various other sugar-free caffeinated beverages that weekend. Like, by the time Monday came along, like I was just tweaking like crazy. And for some reason, I drank more coffee Monday. That was a really bad idea, and my body made sure I realized that.
Well, hopefully the following week will be kinder to you and your caffeine needs.
In terms of needs, I don't think I'll ever need caffeine again, at least until 2017. But we'll see.
And to our viewers and listeners out there, by all means, post in the comments, which hopefully we are able to unlock after this gets posted. What have you all been up to over the past week? What have you been inspired by? What have your nano experiences been so far? If for whatever reason we can't unlock comments on the YouTube stream, go over to our Facebook group page and post a reply on the post for this video episode there as a backup. Or alternative, really, as some have been doing currently. Hopefully we are able to fix that in post. But with that, that's a show, everyone. That is all we have to talk about for this week. Because it's nano season, we should all be writing. What are we doing on a podcast talking to each other? We have stories to create. So with that in mind, we are going to start heading off on our various ways for our own various heroes' journeys in regards to writing and productivity and everything else.
Oh, I still have that MacGuffin on the floor I have to clean up.
Oh. Well, before Justin cleans up his MacGuffins, let's close things out by reminding people, if we have entertained you in any way, shape, or form over the past hour and a half, go check out the YouTube channel where you can watch all previous episodes. You can theoretically comment on all of them. You can check out our Game Break series where we're currently running BioShock 2 along with the visual novels World and Economica and Everlasting Summer. Everlasting Summer is in its last few episodes. I can confirm that it has been completed. Whether or not satisfactorily, that is up to viewers. World End Economica just keeps on going. Although it's gotten very entertaining, so for future episodes, look forward to that. Along with any other various shenanigans that we get up to, from events, conventions, interviews, etc. If you want to talk to us on social media, we're over on Twitter at FCWordNinja, Tumblr, fcwordninja.tumblr.com, Facebook, facebook.com/fullcoveragewriters. And it is, unfortunately, already the holiday season. As soon as Halloween ended, I think at the chime of midnight, all Halloween decorations automatically turned into Christmas decorations. And
Unless you live in Jersey City, Macy's had their Christmas decorations up since September.
oh, for Pete's sake.
Yeah, I went to, now to
That's
be
what I said.
fair, it's the Christmas tree shop. But I went to the Christmas tree shop in September, and they had Christmas stuff all over the place, and Halloween stuff all over the place.
That's an exception I would allow, seeing as it is the Christmas tree shop. But elsewhere, can't you wait? I mean, I know I'm a Grinch. I refuse to acknowledge the holidays until after Thanksgiving.
But there's nothing to sell for Thanksgiving. That's the issue.
Turkey. And ham. And food.
I meant at, like, stores that weren't grocery stores.
Plushy turkeys.
No.
Plushy ham.
No. Ooh. Can we make plush hams? I bet people would buy that. Make plush meat. That has to be a thing already.
I'm pretty sure that's a thing already, but talk to Ed about it.
Ed, make me a plush ham and a plush bacon.
With a little smiley face on it, or a little frowny face because you're going to eat it.
The frowny face.
If you want to find out if we do happen to create any of these weird, unusual things that we come up with, you can go check out our Etsy store, which is etsy.com/shop/fullcoveragewriters, where we currently have various buttons and bookmarks and ebooks and little plushy word ninjas, and as writer's blocks, and potentially sometime in the future, for all we know, plushy food with little frowny faces on them. Go check it out, because we're working on some new designs for various products, so some stuff will be phased out by the end of the year. So grab stuff while you can. And if you want to track me down, your best bet is still my personal Tumblr, fancypantswolf.tumblr.com. You can also find me on the nano boards here or there. My ID over there is YGJunkie85, because that's who I was in 2003, and I'm too lazy to change it at this point. Where can people find Will?
You can usually find me on my Tumblr page at darkhom.tumblr.com. That's spelled DARKHOM. You can find out updates to My Roommate's a Stripper at myroommatesastripper.tumblr.com, and you can always support me on my Patreon page at patreon.com/darkhom.
And how about Justin?
You can find me at my website, mechanicaljustin.com, and you can find me now on Twitter for the first time at MJOnTap. You can also potentially find me on Twitch pretty soon at Mechanical Justin as well. I would recommend following me now so that you get alerts when I start live streaming some stuff.
MJ on tap.
Yes.
So you have Mary Jane as your bartender now?
Yes. And she's always on tap.
There's no good way of playing
No.
on that on those words.
No.
Hey, moving on. Where can people find Calvin?
MJ stands for Mechanical Justin.
At this point, Twitter and Instagram are the best places to find me these days. At CCWII. So, yeah, there.
All right, then. With that, thank you everyone for joining us for episode 116 of Word Ninjas Live. tune in next Wednesday for episode 117, where we hit week 2 of Nano. So I don't know how enthusiastic and energetic everyone's going to be during showtime, but
You and
tune
I'm
in
going to
to
start
find
falling
out.
behind at that point, I'm sure.
Yeah, week 2 of Nano is always an interesting time. So be sure to tune in and see how we fared. And until then, go be productive. Go write some words. Go create some plushy hams for us or something. Go have some fun. See you all next time, everyone.
Plush hands.
And it's not like the AA steps. This is more full. No, that would also be full circle. I'm not sure where I'm going with this analogy, so how about we just detail the actual 12 steps before I mess this up even more? The 12 steps kick things off with you are introduced to the hero or heroine, or the main character of your story. One of the main examples that everyone tends to use for the hero's journey is Star Wars. And we would use episodes 4, 5, and 6 of the Star Wars movie verse, as it were, in these examples. Because Luke Skywalker in this example would be the main character, and we are introduced to him and his more or less ordinary world on a desert wasteland of sadness. Things then get kicked off when you are given a call to adventure, or you are given a quest, or some sort of plot point comes up in front of the main character, and they either accept it or refuse it, or try and delay because, hey, they're living an ordinary life in an ordinary world. Why would they want to change things up? If we were to keep with the Star Wars theme, the call to adventure is, hey, we have a weird droid that is doing weird things. Let's go talk to that weird old hermit and see what he knows. It then gets kicked up a notch from there, as for the most part, most heroes or heroines are a little reluctant to leave their ordinary life completely, just at the drop of a proverbial hat, and go off on an adventure, see what there is to see in the world, or try and accomplish great feats. But if you're in Star Wars and your known family kind of spontaneously combusts or not so spontaneously combusts, then you don't really have much keeping you tied down, so you're allowed to keep on rolling. And I'm curious if Justin would like to add any commentary to his sad shaking of his head, or shall I keep on delaying while he continues to set up and get ready and hopefully can join in the conversation?
I'm here. I hope no one saw what just happened off camera.
I wasn't paying attention. I just saw you shake your head.
I carried a giant plate of food and then slipped on the hardwood floor and dropped it all on the ground.
Oh,
Yep. How's my heat now?
you're sounding fine now.
Okay. I think it was using the other mic.
Although now you just sound disappointed and hungry.
I'm not really that hungry, but I am disappointed because those were all crackers and now they're shattered into pieces. So, question about the hero's journey. I assume that's what we're talking about right now?
Yes, or destroying the MacGuffin, or at least getting the MacGuffin away from the main antagonist.
Usually involves locking away some deep, dark, magical item so that a sequel book can be written later about somebody finding and then releasing that secret cage. The World of Warcraft lore has a lot of that. We can't really destroy this enemy because we need to use him for the raid in the next expansion. So we're going to have him locked away, maybe in like an ethereal plane, and then he comes back because he's like super powerful again. What? Doesn't even make any sense.
Or like when in the Lord of the Rings verse, or Middle Earth verse, or whatever you want to call it, they locked away the Necromancer and or Sauron in a couple different ways. They locked away all the ring wraiths and Nazgul, but they eventually come back because the main MacGuffin has not been properly disposed of.
Right, because of reasons.
Because reasons. Because proto-hobbits who then hide in mountains for years with a MacGuffin. Thankfully, once you acquire the MacGuffin, or as they phrase it, seizing the sword, or just main reward after facing off with the main enemy, you're then...
Obtain Triforce.
Yeah. Then, theoretically, you're allowed to take your rewards and winnings and whatnots and head on home, or head on towards some sort of resolution. You're allowed to move on with your life because the adventure is over. Your goals have been accomplished.
There's usually some sort of coda that either wraps up or intrigues for a future possibility of a story.
And then the 11th step is called the resurrection, where the hero emerges from the special world adventure, blah de blah, and transformed by their experiences. They're never the same again. So basically dealing with all the PTSD from their shenanigans.
I feel like step 11 is also spread out through like the whole of Act 3.
Yeah, it's interlaced. And then it wraps things up with return with the elixir, or basically the MacGuffin, if the MacGuffin is not disposed of or destroyed beforehand. I think that could also count as you return to a somewhat normal life with all the experiences and knowledge and skills that you've gained while going on your adventures.
What if Gandalf was the MacGuffin the whole time?
In what way?
So, they always involved the hero reluctantly going on said journey? Or being ill prepared for said journey?
I believe traditionally, yes. There are some authors who kind of futz with the hero's journey to make it more understandable why they don't have as many qualms about going on the hero's journey. Or if it's just parody, then that's a whole nother line of questioning. But it is useful to have mentors because they can help you cross the first line in the sand, as it were, to get towards the MacGuffin or figure things out, go on the adventures. Like Dorothy goes on the yellow brick road. Not sure where...
Oh yeah, I guess that is a hero's journey, isn't it?
Yeah. Not sure where Luke Skywalker would be in regards to passing the first threshold, as they phrase it.
His parents, spoiler alert, or his aunt and uncle getting killed.
I feel like that's more... I guess, yeah, probably would fit under there, wouldn't it?
Because he was basically not going to go, but then they got killed. So then he's like, well, there's nothing for me here.
Yeah. And then the part that comes after that is the hero encounters tests and helpers, and allies and enemies and stuff. Like when Luke goes to find a ship so they can get off planet to start finding the MacGuffin and do stuff. Or as Dorothy picks up wayward peoples in the land of Oz. And usually you're at least introduced to one of the main enemies or the main enemy, who usually has the MacGuffin at that point, or is also hunting for the MacGuffin. And this is usually like the meat of the story, because it's not just a one-off thing. Usually there's multiple tests or trials or aspects to get towards the MacGuffin. And then eventually they phrase it as you reach the innermost cave. Or basically you fight your way up to the boss battle. You've gotten through all the peons and minions and traps and locked doors and stuff, and you finally make it to where the MacGuffin should be.
In the case of A New Hope, the MacGuffin is the Force, and the cave is a literal cave.
Hmm. And then the hero endures the supreme ordeal, which sounds a lot more dramatic than it usually is for most heroes' journeys. That is basically the boss battle. That is when you come up against the main enemy or antagonist in your story. And generally, the hero is successful in some way, shape, or form in either acquiring the MacGuffin or buttons pushed. Good evening, ladies and menfolk, and everyone else out there. Welcome to episode 116 of Word Ninjas Live. I am your host, Charles, and joining me tonight from the darkness.
I am Will, hiding behind the darkness of bad internet connection, here to hopefully at least provide my voice.
And I am Calvin, and you can see me pretty clearly, and hopefully you can hear me just as clearly.
So far, so good.
Well, all right. That's a good start.
And our other co-host is running late. Maybe he'll be able to join us. Maybe not. We shall see. But in the meantime, hey, let's get things rolling. Our talkie point for this week is all about the hero's journey. Because we are properly in November now, and that means it's NaNoWriMo season. So let's talk about stories, specifically the most archetypal story format there is, because Joseph Campbell wrote an entire book about the hero of 1,000 faces. Because the hero archetype is so prevalent across everyone's respective cultures throughout history and storytelling, it's worth paying attention to. If you're able to check out the show notes for this episode over on fcwriters.com for episode 116, you will see that we have tossed up links for the PDF version of Joseph Campbell's book, a link to the full hero's journey, and also some character archetypes, just for your reference. We're not going to be talking about the entire book, because the entire book is about 300 book pages long or so, and we don't have time for that. But there are some specific parts of it that are worth talking about. But before we start diving into such details, let's actually get an intro from our last co-host.
I'm Justin and I'm late. Mic check, mic check.
You are very resonant and echoey,
Okay, hold please.
but you are here, which means we have full attendance. So, and full volume. So jumping right into the hero's journey, what is the hero's journey? There's a couple different perspectives on what the hero's journey is in regards to the various steps and stages and ways you can break it down, but the primary setup is a 12-step process.
Does a hero's journey require a MacGuffin, by definition?
I think the traditional hero's journey does require a MacGuffin. And for those of you not familiar with the term, a MacGuffin is some sort of object or person or activity that needs to be acquired from getting R2-D2 to whoever it needs to go to, and then finding stuff out from there, to checking out whatever Justin is trying to highlight in his very blurry camera. Those are very sad crackers. Now, in Justin's hero's journey, the crackers can be his MacGuffin, but after losing his MacGuffin, what does he do?
That drives the rest of the plot forward. In order to recover, I need to re-find my MacGuffin and finish my journey. Luckily, I found more MacGuffins, which is actually a common plot device in the hero's journey. If they lose something, there's usually another one. Usually the bad guy has something, and then you're like, oh no, we have to get it from the bad guy. And then you're like, oh wait, we found another one, and we can use it against the bad guy.
Yeah, pretty much.
So
I know.
basically, acquire MacGuffin, lose MacGuffin somehow, go on a journey to reacquire MacGuffins,
Right.
or MacGuffins.
Yep. Preferably a more powerful MacGuffin than the one you already had.
And on occasion, destroy the MacGuffin.
Yes.
Sometimes
one
in the fires
true-
of Mount Doom.
Yes, the One Ring is a MacGuffin. You may argue that's not a MacGuffin because there actually is exposition and reasoning to why they're trying to destroy the ring. A MacGuffin is usually a dumb thing that has no background. The Elder Scrolls series is really, really bad at this, where they're like, you have to find the staff that's in this dungeon. It belonged to some king for some reason, and it's the only thing that has the magical spell to defeat the other dragon. You're like, what? And then they're like, go get it. And welcome to the Hero's Journey 101. It's basically dungeon crawling.
Yeah, it really is. Because, I mean, if you're living in the real world and you get tossed into that type of scenario, you're probably going to be a little hesitant or a little jaded as to the whole scenario and kind of call it out for what it is. Like, why am I being drawn into this ridiculous scenario after living such a normal life? Thankfully, in the hero's journey, you're generally met with some sort of mentor or wise old man and or woman who know more than they should about the MacGuffin and things going on.
Does the Hero's Journey